There comes a moment in every human life when something inside simply breaks. It's not ordinary sadness, nor a fleeting burst of anger. It's deeper, more rooted. It feels as if the soul, exhausted, refuses to keep carrying the weight of other people's expectations, to maintain relationships that only drain its vital energy, to keep playing roles that no longer have anything to do with its essence. This silent yet devastating instant is what Carl Jung identified as the true beginning of individuation, the moment when the social mask falls away and the authentic self begins to rise from the depths. What's most curious is that this calling doesn't arrive with grand announcements. There are no fireworks in the sky, no marked date on the calendar. No one says, "Today is the day you'll break free." It simply happens, and it happens precisely when we least expect it, yet paradoxically, when we need it most. It comes after long seasons of trying to convince yourself that things will get better. You tell yourself, if I try harder, if I'm more patient, if I hide my pain better, maybe everything will finally fall into place. But it doesn't. It never does. The soul knows the truth, and in silence it exacts the cost of being ignored. It is in this state of emotional and psychic exhaustion that the decision to say enough arises. Jung didn't see this moment as a mere collapse. For him, it wasn't the whim of a tired mind, nor just a mood swing. It was something greater, a summons from the unconscious, a deep calling of the psyche for the individual to stop living outwardly, endlessly pleasing, proving, surviving, and begin listening to the inner life that has long been waiting for attention. This silent cry may have echoed inside you for years, muffled by the noise of obligations, social demands, and the masks you believed you had to wear. But the day comes when that cry can no longer be ignored. Jung said the psyche cannot be betrayed indefinitely. Ignoring who you are, pretending everything is fine, living solely for external approval, all of this creates fractures in the soul. And when those cracks accumulate, the unconscious finds its own way to demand attention through emotional breakdowns, deep emptiness, or even a strange sense that life has lost all meaning. But contrary to what many believe, this is not the end, it is the beginning. This collapse is, in truth, an opening. It is the starting point of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, of reconciling your conscious mind with the vast inner world you've long avoided. Jung called it an inevitable calling, because sooner or later every human being is confronted with the truth of themselves. You can delay it, distract yourself, hide behind social roles, but the psyche always returns. It demands authenticity. It demands that you look inward. And perhaps you are at this point now. Perhaps you feel that silent exhaustion, that sense that the life you've been living no longer fits. If so, understand this. It is not weakness. It is not failure. It is your soul seeking passage. It is Jung whispering through the symbols of your pain. Stop living outwardly and begin to live inwardly. This calling is frightening because it means change, rupture, and often the loss of everything that once seemed essential: relationships, certainties, identities. Yet it is also the greatest opportunity for freedom life can offer you. At its core, what Jung taught us is this: the psyche does not wish to destroy you, it wishes to reveal who you truly are. Once the unconscious makes itself heard, everything changes. It is not about a passing desire, something to be postponed until conditions are favorable. It is far more radical. The psyche demands a change of course. When you truly release what no longer belongs to you, patterns, roles, relationships, beliefs, something breaks that cannot simply be stitched back together. The person you once were gives way to someone new, more whole, more aware, more aligned with the self. Look closely. Many believe saying enough is an act of rebellion, a dramatic outburst. I say it is an act of love. love for oneself. True courage does not announce itself with shouts, but with the firm decision to no longer submit to what corrodes the soul. That moment marks the beginning of individuation, the journey of becoming whole, of aligning consciousness with the deep content of the unconscious. And then comes the inevitable question: why is it so hard to let go of what harms us, even when we know, with all reason, that we should? The answer is uncomfortable, yet it must be faced. Over time, we've built our identity around wounds and justifications. We create narratives that define us. This is what I deserve. That's just how life is. I have no choice. If I leave this, I'll be alone. These stories aren't innocent. They are conditionings shaped by experiences, traumas, upbringing, and often by complexes that have taken over our lives. What we call complexes are like small autonomous kingdoms within the psyche, operating under their own logic. They feed on repetition, drama, and confirmation. An abandonment complex, for example, will scan every relationship for signs that confirm the old wound, and when it finds them, it reacts as if survival itself depends on it. That's why we cling to destructive patterns. Paradoxically, they feel familiar. It's easier to remain in the pain we know than to risk the uncertainty of the unknown. And then there is the persona, the mask we present to the world. It was built to protect us, to ensure we would be accepted. But when the persona becomes our identity card, we begin to deny the parts of ourselves that contradict it. And what is denied does not disappear. It becomes shadow. The shadow, once accumulated, demands to be seen. The cry of the unconscious is often the shadow insisting on integration. Show me, integrate me, stop projecting me onto others. Projections, yes. How many times have you blamed others for what, in truth, belongs to you? We project our weaknesses, desires, and fears onto partners, bosses, friends, and then we react not to what is actually there, but to what we believe we see. This is why we cling, because the true tension does not live in the external world, but in what we carry inside and refuse to face. Jung taught that suffering is often a teacher in disguise. It speaks through symptoms, repetitions, compulsions, and the first step to becoming its student is to recognize that the story you tell yourself may be false and limiting. When you realize you've been trying to write your life from someone else's perspective, family, culture, social class, and not from your own center, then the possibility to rewrite it finally appears. Rewriting is painful because it requires loss. We lose the safety of external certainties, the visibility the mask once offered, the predictability of our social roles. But this is a real gain. We gain authenticity, inner coherence, and finally, the freedom to choose. And that freedom is not recklessness. It is responsibility with oneself, deciding day by day to act in accordance with what we have discovered to be true within us. Here's a practice I often propose. What small lie have you been telling yourself every day? Make an honest inventory, then ask, if I stopped feeding this small lie right now, what might happen? If the answer brings fear, that is exactly where the work of individuation begins. Now, I invite you to write in the comments a simple phrase marking your decision to change. For example, I choose not to be defined by the pain of the past. And add, in just 1 or 2 lines, the first small step you took toward that freedom. Sharing is part of the process. By putting it into words, you bring what was hidden into consciousness. And if this content resonates with you, subscribe to Unshakable Mind. Hit the notification bell to continue this deep journey block by block. Here, we don't offer ready-made answers, we offer a mirror. And if you dare to look into it, transformation begins. In the next segment, we'll explore how complexes are formed, and how, step by step, we can dismantle these inner structures that keep us trapped, turning suffering into raw material for individuation. Every search for inner growth demands an inevitable crossing, the encounter with one's own shadow. It is impossible to individuate, to become whole, without first facing what has been rejected, hidden, or forgotten within. The shadow is made up of all the aspects of the psyche that consciousness once judged unacceptable. From early on, we learned to hide what wouldn't be well received: impulses, desires, vulnerabilities, anger, longings that clashed with what society, family, or religion expected of us. So we adapted, wearing a persona to survive. But what was repressed never ceased to exist. It simply sank into the depths of the soul, waiting for its moment to return, and it does return, always. The shadow reappears in repetitive patterns of suffering, in painful relationships, in conflicts with no apparent explanation, in the silent corrosion of anxiety, in the thoughts we try to push away, but that refuse to leave. It also emerges in our projections. We see in others exactly what we refuse to face in ourselves. The harsh judgment we cast on someone else is almost always a reflection of an unconscious battle we still haven't accepted. When you say enough, that is the moment you are unknowingly accepting the invitation of the shadow. It's when you begin to dismantle the belief system that kept you imprisoned. It is the beginning of a symbolic death. And every death, even symbolic, is painful. It hurts not because we're letting go of external situations, a relationship, a job, a dynamic. It hurts because we're letting go of versions of ourselves, versions that were companions for years, that served as shields, as crutches, as excuses to avoid risking the unknown. Releasing them feels like tearing out a piece of ourselves. Naturally, the unconscious resists. It sends signals, awakens fears, stirs doubts. You begin to ask, did I make the right choice? What if I'm deceiving myself? What if I regret it? These questions are not signs of failure, but essential parts of the process. They are the final efforts of the old self trying to stay alive. Here lies the truth few want to face. For a new self to be born, the old must die, and that death is never peaceful. It demands tears, sleepless nights, and the silence of staring into your own mirror and no longer recognizing the face staring back. Yet it is precisely in that empty space that transformation begins. Jung said there is no awakening of consciousness without pain. And he added, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But when you choose to cross instead of run away, what once looked like an abyss becomes a passage. At this point, you discover something paradoxical. The shadow, which once seemed like a terrifying enemy, is in fact an ally. It holds the vital energy you repressed, the creative force you denied, the power to live with intensity. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean surrendering to the chaos of your impulses, but rather recognizing them, accepting them as part of yourself, and learning to channel them consciously. True freedom is not about erasing the shadow, but allowing it to take part in the dance of life. For only when we embrace our darker side can we fully inhabit our light without illusions. So I ask you, which parts of yourself have been exiled and are asking to return? What desires, emotions, or talents have been buried under the fear of judgment? The process of individuation begins the moment you allow yourself to gather those forgotten fragments and return them to the wholeness of your being. And remember, every rebirth is preceded by a death. By letting go of the version of yourself that no longer serves you, you create space for a life that pulses with authenticity. That life may feel frightening at first, but it is infinitely more real than the comfortable prison of the old self. Share in the comments. Which part of yourself do you feel you're still hiding? By writing it down, you begin to bring light to the shadow, and that alone is already a decisive step toward integration. And if this reflection speaks to Your soul, subscribe to Unshakable Mindset. Here, each chapter is an invitation to look deeper within yourself, to move through discomfort, and to discover the freedom that can only be born of authenticity. In the next chapter, we'll explore how this encounter with the shadow is not the end, but the portal to true courage, the beginning of building a new self, more whole, more conscious, and closer to the self. It is at this point that many give up, turning back to familiar ground, even if it is painful. Fear grows intense, almost suffocating. But here lies an essential truth. Fear is not a sign of error. Fear is a sign of change. The unconscious, in its primal function, seeks to keep you in the predictable, the familiar, the mapped-out territory. It does not care about your happiness, only your survival. To the unconscious, any step into the unknown feels like a threat. That is why, when you decide to break patterns, cut ties, and face your shadow, your inner system reacts as if you were in real danger. And this is where the true battle begins, the struggle between the paralyzing comfort of the old self and the vibrant uncertainty of the new. If you can resist the temptation to turn back, if you can move through the initial chaos without giving in to panic, something extraordinary happens. You begin to reclaim the energy that had been scattered. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as a kind of psychic rebirth. For years, perhaps decades, your life force was fragmented, trapped in situations that drained your soul. Each time you forced yourself to stay in an empty relationship, you gave away a piece of your strength. Each time you silenced an emotion to avoid disturbing others, you surrendered another fragment. Each time you wore a mask to be accepted, you abandoned yet another part of yourself. This process is slow and insidious. Little by little, a person loses vitality, until one day they wake up and realize they no longer recognize themselves. But when you make the courageous decision to let go, to release what no longer resonates with your essence, that energy returns. It's as if invisible threads, once tied to realities that drained your soul, are finally severed, freeing the power that has always been rightfully yours. In that instant, life begins to take on new colors. What once felt impossible suddenly becomes attainable. What once seemed essential suddenly loses its meaning. What once took up so much space suddenly no longer matters. And here's something almost no one talks about. Crossing this process doesn't just restore your energy, it restores something even more precious: self-love. Because it is impossible to release what diminishes you without, at the same time, choosing yourself. It is impossible to face the shadow without learning to embrace yourself. By saying no to what destroys you, you are saying yes to yourself. And that yes is revolutionary. Jung believed that this self-love is not selfishness, but the foundation of every authentic life. Only when you choose yourself can you relate to others in truth. Only when you respect yourself can you love without begging. Only when you recognize your inner dignity can you walk through the world with steadiness and serenity. But make no mistake, this self-love doesn't appear as an immediate gift. It is born slowly, like a flame that begins weak and flickering, but grows stronger with every decision aligned with your essence. It is as if each step toward authenticity is a breath that fuels this inner fire. The process is painful, yes, often lonely, but it is along this path that you discover the quiet strength that has always been within you, dormant under layers of fear and conditioning. And then something profound is revealed. You no longer need the constant approval of others because you have found a foundation within yourself. You no longer need to beg for love because you have discovered an inexhaustible source in your own heart. You no longer need to cling to illusions because you have found the courage to live with what is real. This is the true meaning of individuation. It is not about becoming perfect or immune to life's pains, but about becoming whole, reconciled with all your parts, light and shadow, weakness and strength, loss and achievement. The initial fear was only the guardian of the portal. Now that you've crossed it, you discover that on the other side lies a life more expansive, more fulfilling, and more real. And you? Are you willing to cross this portal, or will you remain in the sterile comfort of the old self? Share in the comments. What decision do you know you need to make, but fear still holds you back? Perhaps by writing it down, you'll find the first thread of courage that has already been waiting within you. In the next chapter, we'll see how this reclaimed energy not only transforms your inner life, but also begins to ripple into every external area, your relationships, your dreams, your purpose. The love that is born after the moment of enough is unlike anything you've ever felt. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't depend on anyone's validation. It doesn't need to be approved by outside eyes. It is a quiet yet unshakable love, arising from the simple recognition, I am enough, exactly as I am. And in that instant, life begins to transform in irreversible ways. You stop chasing what was never yours. You stop accepting emotional scraps. You stop believing that someone else has to save you, because you finally realize the power to save yourself has always been within you. At this point, alignment happens almost naturally. It's not that the universe rewards your choice. It's that you finally come into harmony with what has always been yours by right. Relationships begin to reconfigure. Doors that once seemed locked suddenly open. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. Not because you changed the world outside, but because you changed yourself. But here's something few people understand. The process doesn't end when you discover self-love. On the contrary, that's only the beginning, because from this awakening comes a new challenge: to sustain that love, to choose yourself every single day, to resist the temptation of slipping back into the old patterns that once imprisoned you. Before, maybe you excused toxic behavior, turned a blind eye to the obvious, or settled for less than you deserved out of fear of loneliness. But after the moment of enough, you can no longer deceive yourself in the same way. Your perception shifts. What once felt tolerable now becomes unbearable. What you once normalized now stands out clearly as something that no longer belongs in your life. That is the true power of self-love. It doesn't just strengthen you, it completely redefines what you accept, what you choose, and what you build from this point forward. With this new awareness, you can no longer fool yourself. It's as if you've awakened from a deep sleep and, for the first time, you see life without filters. What once seemed acceptable now feels intolerable. The excuses you repeated to convince yourself no longer make sense. And it's right here that one of the deepest transformations takes place. You begin to see people as they truly are, not as you wish they were. For years, perhaps, you believed that if you were good enough, loyal enough, endlessly patient and understanding, you could change someone. That your love would be so powerful that eventually, they would recognize your worth and finally rise to meet it. But now, you grasp a hard, liberating truth. No matter how much you love, you can never fill the emptiness of someone who refuses to fill it for themselves. Jung taught that a person who has not integrated their shadow will inevitably project their inner conflicts onto others. That is why so many relationships become vicious cycles, repeating the same patterns of pain again and again. Those who will not face their own darkness unconsciously seek someone who can serve as a mirror for their wounds, and so often you were that mirror. The difference now is that you see it. You no longer lose yourself in the maze of justifications. You understand that the weight you carried was never yours, but the shadow the other refused to face. And in that moment, you free yourself from one of the greatest illusions, the belief that your love can save someone who has not chosen to save themselves. Reaching this point means you can no longer pretend. You can no longer deceive yourself. What you once tolerated or explained away now stands in front of you with absolute clarity. It's like waking from a long sleep and seeing life for the first time without fear, without the distorted lens of someone else's expectations. This is when a profound transformation occurs. You begin to see people and situations as they truly are, without the veil of idealization. For years, you may have convinced yourself that if you just tried harder, someone would change, that your loyalty, patience, and devotion would make them recognize your worth. But the truth is both harsh and freeing. None of that is your responsibility. Someone else's inner emptiness is not yours to fill. Love is not repair. Love is not a substitute for another person's journey of self-discovery. Jung reminded us that when a person fails to integrate their shadow, the repressed impulses, fears, and disowned desires, they project those conflicts onto others. This is why patterns repeat in relationships. The same pain, the same disappointments, the same cycles of frustration. Someone who has not faced their own darkness seeks unconsciously a mirror for their dilemmas. And often you were that mirror, reflecting pain and expectations that were never yours to carry. With this new self-awareness, you recognize the need to break that cycle. The first step is not to change the other. It is to change yourself, to face your own shadow, accept your imperfections, and integrate both your strengths and your vulnerabilities. By doing this, you begin to understand that true relationships are not built on projections or unrealistic expectations, but on presence, mutual respect, and authenticity. And then something extraordinary happens. You no longer depend on others' approval to feel whole. The self-love born from true self-awareness becomes a transforming force. It reshapes the way you move through the world. You stop accepting emotional crumbs. Stop justifying harmful behavior. Stop sacrificing yourself for expectations that were never yours to begin with. You realize you can only offer what is genuinely yours, and that it is not your role to heal wounds that are not yours. By integrating the shadow, you also gain discernment. Jung said that psychic maturity is not measured by the absence of conflict, but by the ability to recognize it and respond consciously. You learn to see which relationships enrich you and which ones drain. You begin to recognize toxic patterns before they ensnare you, because your awareness has become a guide rather than a prisoner of old conditioning or illusions. And here lies the beauty of the process. The more you know and accept yourself, the more authentic you become. Your presence is no longer an attempt to please or control. It becomes a magnetic force of truth. People and opportunities naturally align with you, not because you force them to, but because you are living in coherence with your essence. It's as if life itself responds to the integrity of your soul. But make no mistake, this journey is neither simple nor quick. Integrating the shadow is continuous work, daily, demanding, and courageous, because it asks you to face what you once chose to ignore. Yet every step, no matter how small, brings freedom. Every decision to release unrealistic expectations, every moment of honesty with yourself, returns energy, clarity, and inner peace. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming a whole and conscious being, is the deepest mission of human life, and a vital part of this journey is learning to differentiate what belongs to you from what belongs to someone else's shadow. It is understanding that life can only truly flourish when you walk free from other people's projections, free from imprisoning expectations, free from the burden of trying to fill voids that were never yours. So here is my final invitation. Reflect. Which relationships in your Life are built on projections. Which connections drain your energy instead of enriching it? Write in the comments, which relationship do you feel you need to transform or release in order to finally become whole? If this reflection touched your soul, subscribe to Unshakable Mind. Here we explore the deep psychology of Carl Jung to help you look within, confront your shadow, and transform your life from the inside out. When you finally break away from what no longer resonates with your essence, it is natural to feel a momentary emptiness, a subtle discomfort that challenges both your mind and your heart. Jung reminded us that the unconscious does not seek comfort, but transformation. And every true transformation begins with a period of chaos, where what once felt solid dissolves, creating space for something more authentic and profound to emerge. In this process, nostalgia may arise. Doubt may whisper, "Did I make the right choice? What if I never find anything better?" But understand this. Those feelings are not signs of failure. They come because your psyche is still adjusting to your newfound freedom. The familiar, even when toxic, feels comfortable. Change, on the other hand, requires courage, patience, and trust in yourself. That sense of loss is temporary. Jung reminded us that once awakened, we can never return to who we once were. The you who tolerated draining relationships, who accepted emotional crumbs, who hid your shadow to avoid conflict, that person no longer exists, and they should never return. It is precisely here that the magic begins. When you align with your worth and embrace your integrity, your life begins to reflect this new vibration. The outer world mirrors the inner world. People who no longer resonate with your journey drift away. Situations that once suffocated you lose their power, and new opportunities begin to appear naturally. This transformation is quiet, almost invisible at first, yet its impact is profound. Individuation is not a race to achieve, control, or please. It is a deep dive into your inner self. Each integration of the shadow, each choice for authenticity, reshapes not only you, but the way the world responds to you. The initial chaos is not something to fear, but something to embrace. It is the fertile ground where the new is born. It is the threshold between the life you once knew and the life you truly deserve. In this space, you learn to let go of what no longer serves you, to trust your intuition, and to put yourself first without guilt. And then a powerful truth reveals itself. The more you connect with your authenticity, the more the world around you transforms. People who vibrate at the same frequency begin to appear. Opportunities that once seemed impossible unfold naturally. There is no frantic effort, no desperate control, only the serene strength of someone who chooses themselves every single day. True freedom, as Jung described, is not the absence of challenges, but the ability to remain whole, present and aligned even in the midst of uncertainty. It is the power to say no without guilt, to set boundaries without fear, to love without losing yourself. It is the freedom that is born when you integrate your shadow, embrace your imperfections, and allow yourself to be whole. So reflect on your own path. Which patterns are you still carrying? Which relationships or situations keep reflecting shadows that are not yours? Comment below, which habit, relationship, or fear do you need to release to finally live in your authenticity? By sharing, you not only strengthen yourself, but also inspire others to do the same. If this video is speaking to your consciousness, subscribe to Unshakable Mind, leave a like, and activate the notifications. Here we explore the deep psychology of Carl Jung to help you transform your life from the inside out. Because when you finally say enough and let go of what no longer serves you, something profound happens. Everything you once tolerated becomes unbearable, and it's not arrogance, it's awakening. It's the moment you set new standards for yourself, standards of respect, self-care, and love. And when you respect yourself, the world learns to respect you too. There comes a point where many stumble. Transformation is not a straight line. There are days of progress and nights of doubt, moments when everything seems aligned, and others when it feels like you've slipped backward. But Jung reminded us that this is natural. True individuation, the path to becoming whole, requires patience, resilience, and the courage to remain steady, even when everything around you feels unstable. The greatest danger in this process is not failure, but the fear of the void. The void can be terrifying. It shows up as an empty space where once there was security, even if that security was an illusion. It's the space left behind when old relationships, habits, and beliefs that no longer served you have been released. And it's exactly in this void that true transformation begins. Jung said the unconscious uses the void as fertile ground. It is here that you find the opportunity to reinvent yourself, to rediscover forgotten parts of your being, and to see life with greater clarity. When you resist the temptation to immediately fill this space with old patterns or unhealthy relationships, something extraordinary happens. Clarity begins to emerge. You see who you truly are, without filters, without masks, without the need to please or to justify yourself. This is the moment when authenticity begins to blossom. And when you become authentic, you naturally draw into your life what truly resonates with your essence. Jung affirmed that the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. Everything you experience, people, opportunities, challenges, mirrors your state of consciousness. If you are still clinging to old patterns, your environment will continue to reflect those limitations. But when you allow yourself to explore the void, to recognize your worth, and to set new standards, you create space for the new to emerge. People, opportunities, and experiences begin to align with your newly discovered frequency, not because you control or force it, but because you now radiate coherence, inner strength, and authentic presence. In this process, detachment becomes transformative. Letting go is not simply about release. It's about allowing life to reorganize itself around who you truly are. It's about learning to trust the wisdom of the unconscious, the natural rhythm of life, and what Jung called individuation, the unfolding of a whole, conscious, and authentic being. And so, a vital invitation: look into your own void. What old patterns are you still carrying? Which relationships or habits no longer serve your growth? Allow yourself to feel it, to explore who you are without masks or justifications. Share in the comments. What void are you willing to explore in order to become truly whole? By sharing your experience, you not only strengthen your own journey, but also inspire others to do the same. If you feel this video is transforming the way you see yourself, subscribe to Unshakable Mind, leave a like, and turn on notifications. Here we explore the depth psychology of Carl Jung to help you face your shadow, embrace your void, and flourish with authenticity. When you reach the point where you no longer depend on anything external to feel complete, something profound happens. It's not just a passing emotional state, it is a structural transformation of who you are. Jung taught us that individuation, the process of becoming whole and authentic, means understanding and integrating every part of yourself, even those you once denied or repressed. At this stage, when you truly love and respect yourself, your life begins to mirror that inner coherence. Before, your actions may have been driven by need, fear, or a hunger for approval. You sought love, validation, recognition, perhaps without realizing that these efforts were reactive, attempts to fill internal voids that no one else could ever fill. But when transformation takes place, When you integrate your shadow, embrace your imperfections, and become a conscious observer of yourself, the dynamic changes completely. Now you radiate love instead of chasing it. You embody presence instead of seeking attention. You attract without forcing, without manipulating, without begging for recognition. This inner shift reverberates outward. Jung said that what we experience externally is a direct reflection of what we carry within. If you cultivate self-compassion, recognize your worth, and set clear boundaries, the people, situations, and opportunities that arise will begin to reflect that reality. Those who once drained your energy may now step aside, while space opens for mutual reciprocity. What once seemed distant or impossible now approaches, not by coincidence, but because your energy has changed. Because you have become aligned with your essence. By recognizing your own worth, you stop settling for crumbs. The bare minimum no longer satisfies you because you deeply understand what you deserve and what nurtures your growth. There is no longer an internal tug-of-war between fear and desire, doubt and courage. Each choice you make becomes aligned with your true self, each decision a silent affirmation of authenticity. This doesn't mean everything will be easy. Jung reminded us that individuation is a lifelong process, a conscious effort to bridge the conscious and unconscious. But it does mean you no longer have to fight against yourself. This internal coherence has a magnetic effect. People who now enter your life come to add, not to take. They connect with you through mutual respect, presence, and authenticity, not through fear, neediness, or attempts to fill their own voids. Opportunities arise naturally, reflecting not only your personal growth but also the alignment of your intentions with the energy you radiate. And here lies the beauty of this process. You realize that the world doesn't change because you control or force it. It changes because you have changed. Abundance begins within, and everything around you becomes a reflection of that inner state. Jung emphasized that true freedom is being consistent with yourself, while not depending on the approval or behavior of others to feel whole. This freedom is what transforms relationships, opportunities, and even the way you perceive your own life. So this is a crucial moment for reflection. Ask yourself which patterns, relationships, or beliefs you are still tolerating that are not aligned with your authenticity. Which aspects of your life need the same transformation you've already begun internally? Share in the comments. What are you ready to let go of in order to live with greater coherence and self-love? By expressing your discoveries, you not only strengthen your own journey, but also inspire others to embrace the path of individuation. If this content is resonating with you and helping to transform your self-perception, subscribe to Unshakable Mind, leave a like, and turn on notifications. Here we explore the deep psychology of Carl Jung, bringing powerful insights to help you connect with your essence, transform your inner world, and reflect that authenticity in the world around you. It's not that the world has changed and then you noticed. It's that you have changed. And here lies the great truth Jung taught us. External reality is always a reflection of what we carry within. If you become more conscious, if you integrate your shadow, if you connect with your authentic self, everything around you begins to mirror that transformation. People, opportunities, challenges, nothing looks the same once you've changed within. When you begin to live according to your essence, every decision carries weight, meaning, and coherence. Choices are no longer based on fear, neediness, or the desire to please, but on alignment with what truly matters to you. Jung said individuation is this ongoing process of becoming whole, of becoming who you truly are, while also learning to accept the flow of life without trying to control everything. It's in this balance that true freedom arises, but this freedom is not easy. The unconscious, as Jung reminds us, resists change because its function is to keep us in the known, the predictable. It provides a sense of safety, but it also limits our expansion. Along this journey of transformation, you will face doubts, moments of fear, and the temptation to return to the comfort zone. This is natural. It's part of individuation. But it's precisely by moving through these moments that you find your strength. Every time you choose to stay on your path, even when the old still looks appealing, you strengthen your psychological autonomy and move closer to who you truly are. And it is in this state of inner coherence that the world begins to respond harmoniously, not because you control, manipulate, or demand outcomes, but because your energy has shifted. When you stop seeking external approval, when you release the need to please or justify yourself, life begins to flow differently. People who once drained your energy now fall away. New opportunities emerge naturally, and you realize that life was never against you. It was simply reflecting your own level of consciousness. Now, Jung teaches us another vital lesson. The process of individuation is not only for yourself, it is also an invitation to those around you. When you change, your very presence transforms. That's why I want you to do something. Don't keep this message just for yourself. Share this knowledge with someone who needs to hear it. It could be a friend, a family member, or even someone you don't know personally, but who will be impacted by your words and actions. Because what you've learned, what you've integrated into your own journey of self-discovery is not just reflection, it's also a tool for transformation in others. Leave a comment below. I want to know what resonated most with you in this message. I want to hear about the stage you're in along this process of individuation, which patterns you've already released, and which parts of your shadow you still need to integrate. Sharing your experience is not just an exercise in awareness. It's an act of courage that reinforces your own transformation and inspires others to begin or continue their journey as well. And if this content touched your soul, if it brought you clarity, strength, or motivation, support the Unshakable Mind channel. Leave a like, subscribe, and activate notifications to keep receiving deep insights based on the psychology of Carl Jung. Here, you'll find reflections, teachings, and practical tools to navigate the unconscious, embrace your shadow, become authentic, and create a life aligned with your essence. Remember, individuation is an ongoing process, but every step you take toward your true self reverberates through your life and the lives of those around you. Every time you choose authenticity, every time you respect and love yourself, the world reflects your integrity back to you. That's how you build a life that doesn't depend on external validation, that doesn't chase approval, and that finally manifests in fullness. So take a deep breath and recognize your strength. You've come this far. You've faced fears, released old patterns, integrated parts of your shadow, and now you're closer to becoming whole. This is the power of deep self-knowledge. This is the legacy of Carl Jung applied to your life, the realization that transformation begins within, and that when you change inside, everything around you changes with you. Share, comment, be part of this community of transformation, and continue your journey with courage, awareness, and self-love. The path is yours, and every conscious step is a victory.